Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here. My name is Christina Knobloch. I am the membership director here at the Napa Farm Bureau. Just a little bit about the Napa Farm Bureau really quickly. The Napa Farm Bureau is a member-driven organization dedicated to protecting, promoting, and preserving agriculture in Napa County. Representing farmers, ranchers, vintners, and agricultural businesses, the Napa Farm Bureau serves as a unified voice of issues affecting the local agricultural community at the county, state, and federal levels. Thank you so much for your support of the Napa Farm Bureau, and thank you for your membership within the Napa Farm Bureau. We appreciate your support and are very, very happy to have you here today for our member webinar. We are proud to present Tracy Cleveland, the Agricultural Commissioner and Sealer Weights and Measures for Napa County. Appointed in April 2021, her role involves safeguarding agriculture workers, the community, and the environment. As the sealer of weights and measures, she ensures fairness in the marketplace, protecting consumers and businesses alike. Tracy started as a plant inspector in the Napa County Agricultural Commissioner's Office 23 years ago. During that time, she has been involved in various programs, including pest detection, pest exclusion, and pesticide use enforcement. As the Agricultural Commissioner, Tracy leads the Ag Department, working with the county and industry partners to uphold regulations related to farming, worker safety, and safe pesticide use. She collaborates with other county agricultural commissioners across California, as well as state and federal agencies like the California Department of Food and Agriculture and the United States Department of Agriculture. Tracy plays a vital role in safeguarding California's agricultural production, natural resources, and environment. We're very pleased to have Tracy join us this morning. Thank you so much, Tracy. And one quick note, we will hold questions until the end of this presentation. Also, the webinar will be recorded and contact information for Tracy will be within the chat. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess I'm ready. Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. And then thank you for the invite to share and provide some updates on some of the things that we're doing in my office. And then, there's some regulatory updates. I had planned to talk today at length about the Gliss incident and Birchill Nursery, getting a ton of questions about that and sitting in weekly meetings to have discussions about it. So I thought that that's where I would start. So I have a formal presentation, PowerPoint presentation. Some of you may have already seen it from my team, but I think it's a good place to start. And then after this, I'll take questions and then I'll have time, hopefully, for a few more updates on some things that are happening. So again, thank you for the invite. Really excited to be here. And I will jump right in. Okay. All right. So hopefully everybody can hear me and they can see my presentation. We learned, mid-May, probably May 22nd, county ag commissioners were made aware of some shipments of vines and other material that had made their way to Costco and Costco throughout California. And those shipments began April 21st and continued for 4 weeks through May 21st. And the reason that we were made aware of it is because Sonoma County's team was inspecting shipments at Costco. I think it was on May 22nd, and noted multiple life stages of glass-wing sharpshooter on that shipment. And we happened to be at our spring conference for ag commissioners. So Andrew came over and pulled me aside and said, hey, my team is at Costco. We're looking at plants. We're seeing glass-wing sharpshooter. You should contact your team and see if you also have a shipment from Birchill and what that looks like. So we did, and I had staff go out. Jump to the next slide. And kind of to back up a little bit, for Napa specifically, we received 4 shipments total over that 4-week time period, so essentially a shipment per week. And that, based on the shipping receipts, we received a total of 220 vines. And so all told throughout the state of California, You can see the list up here, 24 counties with Costco's, which is virtually every Costco in California received material. So 24 impacted counties. What this slide doesn't show you is the 16 additional counties that are neighboring counties to these folks. So places like Lake County, Sutter County, San Luis Obispo, they don't have Costco's, but they do have residents that like to shop at Costco. And so they'll travel to an adjacent county, buy plant material or other things, and then travel back home. So all told, we're talking about 40 counties that had issues with this particular nursery shipping grapevines to their counties, and then residents purchasing them before they had a chance to be inspected. Okay, so I sent my team to Costco. Every county ag commissioner did once we realized what had happened. And our local Costco, I can say, has been pretty responsive. They've been very helpful. We sent a team of people there. You can see the sheer number of plants that we're talking about. So there were a handful of things that came from Birchell, but they also received material from other places. And so it's not unusual for things to be mixed together. And so they took everything out. They staged it for us in the parking, well, in the outside area. I think that's the back area. We created pathways. So we spent hours inspecting every single plant. The day that we went there, we were able to inspect, confiscate, and then destroy 43 additional vines that had not sold, in addition to all of the other plant material. And during the course of that inspection, we did not find any egg masses or evidence of additional life stages on those plants. But in working with Costco, we learned that they had donated 15 vines to our local food bank. So after finishing up at Costco, we went to the local food bank, we confiscated, inspected, and destroyed an additional 15 vines. And on that inspection, we did find an egg mass. We took a sample, and that ended up being our first positive glassy wing sharpshooter egg mass. And it was noted by the state lab after analysis that it was viable. So here's some photos. All told, we found 4 confirmed viable egg masses confirmed by the state's lab. So these are pictures of those egg masses. You can see in the first photo, it looks like half of the cells may have hatched out, and then the other half have, some looks like nymphs inside. You can see on the second picture on the right that it hatched out. There's another egg mass. This also shows hatched egg mass. And then just more pictures of different egg masses. This one came from Borrell Costco. And then in addition to viable egg masses, the 4 that we were confirmed by the state lab, we also had a number of parasitized egg masses that we found at different inspection sites, as well as old egg mass scars. And so, obviously it's concerning. I'll kind of touch on, the process and all of the things we've been doing. So we've been working to trace forward all of these plants. That's really been our goal from the get-go, was to trace forward all 220 vines, which is pretty daunting. Initially, we had no information from Costco. So really we were relying on social media, press releases, industry newsletters, Board of Supervisors newsletters, press interviews with different reporters, other county ag commissioners information. So really any avenue we could take. And so essentially that was a public plea for anyone that purchased vines and other plants from a Costco between that April 21st and May 21st. We were asking them to contact us for any county ag commissioner throughout California, depending on where they live. So we got a lot of responses initially. So our response was to send my team out to those residences to inspect those plants. So we did a great job of that. We sent people out. We confiscated them after inspecting. We took samples if we found evidence of egg masses. We sent those off to the state. And then prior to leaving, we would also conduct an inspection of the entire site. So we were looking in the front yard, we're looking in their backyard, we're looking all over them to make sure that there's nothing there. After the inspection, after the visual survey, we also placed 2 traps at each site so that if we missed anything, then ideally we would find it in a trap. And so for our first 4 positive find sites, we are in the process now of conducting a second full visual survey. So you can see, all plants purchased at Costco, what that response is. And then if there's an additional detection, confirmed egg mass through the state of California lab, then we go back, we place an additional yellow sticky panel trap at any adjacent sites to that property. So if it's a house and it's surrounded by 5 other houses, then all of those houses get an additional sticky trap to expand the area that we're looking at, essentially. And then my team is really well versed in what to look for. So we did a full inspection at each site, and then in confirmed locations, we're doing a second full inspection. So not only are we doing the trapping, but I have staff that sent notices to those residences. We give them a 48-hour notice that we're going to come and do another inspection. And so 2 of those happened last week, and 2 more are happening this week. And so we go and we sweep the entire yard, the entire area, front and backyard, and we're again looking for any evidence of additional life stages. So this kind of gives you a snapshot of some of the tools we're using. My team is really well versed in Esri tools, so we've created some surveys that we're using internally. One of those surveys is this. It's a dashboard, and essentially is for anybody to take a quick look to see where we're at and what the progress is. So, we've populated it with 220 grapevines total. It shows you that we've been able to inspect and destroy 145. It also tells you how many Napa residents we've been able to make contact with. That has more detailed information from my team about addresses, where they went, what they were able to find, what they could or couldn't do based on responses from the residents, and then the number of viable vacancies or listings. So it's been very helpful. We also created another system that was essentially a way for us to track phone calls, incoming phone calls from the public, incoming emails. When the first initial press releases went out, the amount of information we were getting was overwhelming. So it was a way for us to categorize and then make assignments to my team and track that we were following up on every single message, every single contact from the community, including both the phone and email. So it's been pretty labor intensive. I think we have a good process in place, and so it's been pretty effective. And so all told, we've placed an additional 238 glass-wing sharpshooter traps. And so initially, once you place the trap, you are inspecting it 2 times per week for 2 weeks. And then after that 2 weeks, we drop to 1 time per week for 2 weeks. And then after that, we move to our regular standard servicing, which is 1 time every 2 weeks. And so this also denotes, our regular glass-wing trapping efforts. Total 811 plants. So to add 238 is it's a lot of extra work. And I will say we've had a lot of support from the county. So from the Board of Supervisors and from the CEO. So I was given permission to hire an extra limited term staff to help with these efforts, because this trapping route it's incredibly important. It didn't have enough manpower to keep it running because it's continuously in rotation when we finish servicing the traps and then we start all over again. So again, very labor intensive. So of the 4 positive find sites, 2 of those were in Napa and 2 were in American Canyon. Again, we've done visual surveys of those sites and added additional traps at all 4 of those sites. And we have not had any additional finds in those traps that we've added at these 4 sites or at any of the sites throughout Napa County. So any of the places we went and confiscated and inspected grapevines, we've not had any additional finds in those traps. In addition to the 4 egg nests that came back positive, we also sent off 6 additional samples that ended up being non-target nymphs parasitized or old egg masses that were not viable. And in one instance, we had a cast skin, which is really hard to see. It's essentially the shed skin of the nymph. It's tiny, and I have a lot of amazing inspectors, and one in particular that was able to spot that in a bunch of foliage in someone's yard. So it's pretty amazing. And it ended up not being related to what's. Okay, so Costco customer list. I talked about our plea to the public to provide us information, to reach out to us if they had purchased grapevines. So really, we were relying heavily on any responses from the public, which was great, but that doesn't help you recover every single plant because it's trickling in and that information isn't necessarily getting out to everybody that you need it to. And so once we got the Costco customer list, which CDFA worked with their county council and with Costco's county council or council for weeks requesting this. I think they ended up finally serving them with warrants, and so they had to release the information to us. So then CDFA prepped it. They sent off that contact information for each purchasing customer to every county. It was a lot of data. For Napa, we're a relatively small county. So it ended up being 70 Napa County residents that purchased grapevines, and approximately 110 grapevines that were sold to residents of Napa. So way less than the 220 grapevines. And I think that's explained by the fact that we were able immediately, before any were sold, to confiscate 63 vines prior to sale. And then we're noting that a lot of folks like to shop at the Napa Costco, but they don't necessarily reside here. So 40 plus vines were purchased by residents that live in adjacent areas, Sonoma, Solano County, Marin County, lots of different areas. And so they shop at Napa Costco and then leave and take those vines home. And so we're really working with every county ag commissioner. We're working with our partners. We're working with CDFA. Prior to the Costco list, I think we had 34 surveys or inspections that we did at home residences. And then the Costco list provided 30 additional site visits based on the folks that we hadn't heard back from. So that's been great. There are approximately 15 customer sites that are remaining. They're outliers. They're not responsive to multiple phone calls. In some instances, there's a language barrier. We've tried texting as well. The next step is emails. And then when and if that doesn't work, then we will do door knocks. CDFA is California Department of Food and Ag, is a little hesitant for us to do a lot of door knocking, given where this might lead, kind of what it's going to look like down the road. But we're going to start doing that. I think regardless of where this leads, we need to be able to have contact with these folks. So we're working up essentially notice. We're going to go do a door knock. We're going to provide them with information. Ideally, we'll have a conversation, and the pie in the sky is to get to get access to their yards to be able to look at those plants and inspect them. And worst case scenario, we place additional traps at those locations and then continue to monitor them. So not too many unresponsive customers, but a handful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about additional shipments, and then I'll kind of dive into our nursery program and what that looks like. I've had a ton of questions from industry on what that means, and how this happened. What are you doing? What does the program look like? So first, let's talk about additional glassy wing sharpshooter shipments. So we've had, I don't know what it is. This year seems to be a high year for glassy wing sharpshooter infestations in the areas where they're well established. So we had a shipment on June 2nd, 108 mixed plants that we rejected and returned to the sender. And we were able to do that before they actually arrived in Napa because of contact with our county partners. And so Marin County staff were at a location in Marin inspecting this particular nursery shipment, and they found a live adult twist on that shipment. And so that Ag Commissioner Joe Divinity immediately got on the phone, and he was making phone calls to all of us in Northern California to make sure that we knew what he had found. And so that gave every county Ag Commissioner that hadn't received the delivery yet to get on the phone with the shipping nursery and to let them know while they were in transit that we were going to reject the plants, and they didn't need to bother offloading the shipment or arriving in Napa because we weren't going to accept that shipment. And so that's a good example that kind of demonstrates the communication between the county Ag Commissioners and the states. But really, county Ag Commissioners are the folks on the ground. And so it's really important for us to have that flow of communication. County Ag Commissioners have some discretion on whether we accept plant shipments and depending on the circumstances. So in this instance, we flexed our authority to not accept shipment. So shipment number 2 on June 23rd, we received a shipment of plants that we rejected and we returned to sender. Those plants were coming out of a nursery in Ventura County. They had an excessive amount of egg masses. And actually this image is a picture. We strip the egg masses off of the plant and we'll prep them for sending off to the state lab. And so these nymphs actually started hatching out while they were in our lab. So we were able to get a photo. The good news on that is that because this shipment came from an infested area, they had been previously treated with pesticides. And so the idea is that any shipments coming out of those areas are treated well. It coats the plants. And so anything that could hatch out will die upon hatch out in contact with the residual pesticide that's on those leaves. So that's the good news. But in general, I will say we have the discretion to reject shipments if there's a general uncleanliness. So an excessive amount of old egg masses or viable egg masses, even if they've had pesticide applications, that shouldn't be the standard. They should be generally clean. And so that's something that we are always looking for. Third shipment. This has been making the round. So maybe you all are aware on June 25th, there was a shipment of desert willow plants that came into Napa. They actually came into numerous Costco's throughout California. They came from Texas. When we received the call from Costco, I sent staff there. We inspected the plants. We noted a lot of egg masses on those plants. And so my team inspected, took samples, and then destroyed. So none of these plants were sold from that Costco. We confiscated it and destroyed every single willow that came in. And then in the meantime, we're having conversations with CDFA, with other county ag commissioners. This particular shipment is pretty interesting. So it came out of Texas. Anything that's coming from other states passes through the border protection stations. And then their staff will do inspections on large trucks. And so they usually would note an excessive number of pests. And at the very least, they will send what's called the 008 to every receiving county that is going to get material from those shipments that they're checking at the border stations. This particular shipment, only 3 008s were sent to a handful of receiving counties. Napa was not included in that. And CDFA is investigating this particular incident. Come to find out, this shipping nursery in Texas, this is established in a lot of parts of Texas, so that's not unusual. But they had 10 different trucks that were moving through the border stations. Usually it would be in one truck. They subcontracted to 10 different trucks that then moved through multiple border protection stations throughout California. So it was a very odd situation. And there were a lot of failures there. Dirty nursery stock. They did do a plant or a pesticide treatment of the plants, but their program is not as typically as effective as ours. And so those materials, the pesticide materials used, weren't necessarily targeting GWIS, they were targeting other pests. And so CDFA is continuing to investigate. For that particular incident, there are, I think, 68 stores in 21 different counties received desert willow plants. 376 desert willows from 52 of those stores in 10 counties were sold to customers prior to the counties being notified by their local Costco's. So that's an issue that it clearly highlights that there are some failures in the system and some missteps. So Napa County was not one of those counties that sold materials. We were able to inspect and destroy anything before it went up to the public. And so that's the good news. And I will say, I always get a lot of questions about border stations. We all drive through different border stations, and sometimes they're manned. They pass you through, nobody stops you. Border stations are grossly understaffed. That's an understatement. They do have staffing at the high travel stations. So they have more staff available in those areas. And they are targeting large commercial vehicles. And so that happened here, but because this company or this nursery subcontracted with 10 different local truckers, they were traveling in small containers. And so those trucks weren't stopped. Basically, not all of them were. So a lot of missteps. Again, CDFA assures us that they're looking into it. And then finally, we had a fourth shipment on June 29th, more plant material that we rejected, inspected, and then destroyed upon arrival, again, because of excessive masses. And that nursery of origin was Riverside County, which is also a fully invested area. So this demonstrates, at least on our end, the process works. My staff is we're looking at all plant shipments. We have good relationships with our nurseries, with landscapers, so they know to notify us. That includes our local Costco. They're really good about calling us, but there are missteps along the way. So I'm going to get a lot of questions about our nursery program. So I'm going to kind of dive into our blue tag plant inspection program. These are nursery programs through the Pierce's Disease Control Program. And the blue tag refers to our high risk plant shipment program. We refer to it as blue tag. And I'm going to kind of talk about some of the paperwork, some of the things that tie into these programs. And so first, I'm showing you a map of the state of California. So the bright blue or turquoise areas, those are generally infested areas. And so that includes LA County, Riverside, Orange, San Diego, San Bernardino, Ventura. And then you'll see in some areas, they're partially infested. Kern is partially infested. It's not a fully infested county. Fresno, partially infested. Tulare, Santa Barbara, and then a little bit in Imperial. So not just having glassy wing sharpshooter in specific areas doesn't necessarily mean the entire county is infested, which I think is an oversight. And I will say that Fresno County in particular, that's clearly an example of a nursery in an area that should probably be designated fully infested. And so that is something that is being discussed by Fresno County and by CDFA, because they have a high number of waste populations. And so this idea that they have areas that are free from, it's not quite accurate. Okay, so we refer to low risk shipments as non-blue tag and then high risk shipments as blue tag. And so we always get the blue tag. We get 24-hour notice in advance that it's coming. We also get, on occasion, depending on which type of nursery program they fall into, we'll get a notice of the pesticide treatment that took place and details about that. So that's very helpful. It helps us know where it's coming from, when it was treated, what materials were used. So this is the first of one of the nursery programs. So this is the first type of blue tag shipping nursery that we'll look at. It's called the Program Regulation Shipper. And this is named after the type of compliance agreement that they have with CDFA. And so you'll see this program regulation is only intended for nurseries that are not infested and generally found to be free from WIS. at least on their nursery premise. So Birchell Nursery originally sat in this category. And so this is the least restrictive. It has the most basic requirements of the 3 types of nursery program. It requires the blue tag hold notice that counties receive. So that notifies us that it's coming from an area that might be infested and we need to take notice of it. And then we also get 24-hour notice in advance. They also are required to have their QIS paperwork stamped. And then it's inspected at the destination county, so the receiving county, and that discretion lies with the local county ag commissioner. And in Napa, we look at everything. We're looking at blue tag shipments from high-risk areas and non-blue tag shipments from low-risk areas. Depending on where it's coming from, sort of designates to us how much time we need to spend with that nursery, the plant nursery plants. These shipments do not require a pesticide treatment ahead of shipping, and they're not inspected by the origin county. So the second type of program is our master permit program. This is for nurseries that exist within a GLIS infested area. So Ventura, Riverside, parts of Fresno, this is what's going to apply there, master permit. So this requires, again, the blue tag hold notice indicating that it's high risk, 24-hour notice, the GLIS paperwork, inspection by the destination county, in addition to treatments, and then inspection by the origin county. So for plants, any plants coming to Napa or Sonoma from a master permit nursery, we require them to treat very specifically with Tame or 7. Those are the only products they can use if they're shipping to Napa and Sonoma. If they're shipping to other counties, there's a variety of insecticides that they are able to use, but we specifically have it written into law that anything coming into Napa and Sonoma has to be treated with these 2 products because we know that they're almost 100% effective at killing GLIS. And so that was put into place, I think, 20 years ago when we first established these nursery programs. Pesticide treatments are only valid for 5 days. They're certified, their certification expires 5 days after the initial treatment. So anything coming from these nurseries to Napa has been treated, and then we receive that treatment notification along with it so we know when it happened, what products they used. And then those inspections are done by the origin county as well. So they're inspecting the nursery and then they're inspecting the plants as well, and they move up. Birchell Nursery was, they were not allowed to ship for 4 weeks. Their nursery license was suspended. CDFA and the local county, Fresno, did multiple inspections of their nursery site. They were forced to treat the entire nursery 2 different times and then wait that 4-week waiting period. And they were shuffled from that regulatory nursery permit to this master permit. So any shipments now coming out of Fresno, Birchell Nursery have to be treated. And then they're also inspected by the origin county in the destination county. And then the final nursery type program is our our ATP program, our approved treatment program. So this, again, requires a blue tag notice, 24-hour notification to receiving counties, with paperwork, pesticide treatment. In this instance, every nursery that's shipping under the ATP program has to use those 2 products I talked about, Tame or 7. And that application is witnessed by that origin county. So those are the different types. It's very confusing. There's a lot of kind of nuances to it, but this is the program that CDFA manages and runs. And then just to touch a little bit on our response to incoming plant shipments. I talked about it a little bit. We're looking at any plant material that's arriving in Napa County. So it's coming from different nurseries throughout the state. And those nurseries contact us, we send staff out. We're looking at all of that commercial plant material. We also will look at landscape material. If residents call us, they have plants that they received, will go there. So anybody that calls, we're willing to do an inspection. That includes grapevine shipments that you all order. We're also inspecting those. And all told, we look at probably 3,000 shipments per year. And then when we're doing these inspections, we're looking for adults, nymphs, egg masses, also looking at general cleanliness of nursery stock, and then really evidence of any other pests of note. And so it's important to know that we're looking, my team is really dedicated. They're very good at what we do. And we're really working hard to ensure that we keep glassy wing out. So in the meantime, we're monitoring the traps for the shipments that are the plants that sold to different residents in Napa County. Yeah, it's a big undertaking, but I think we'll get there. So we've had no additional fines based on those traps for inspections at residences throughout the county. There are no eradication efforts being taken on in any part of California. So we don't have any nursery, any of these nursery shipments that have resulted in eradication efforts yet. There's no populations, there's no breeding populations. Every county is still really focused on the trace forward components and then the trapping pace to look for any life stages of glasswing sharpshooter in those areas that are symptomatic. I can touch on it a little bit. I've gotten some questions about rapid response. And if we had eradication efforts had to be started, what would that look like? And Napa are very well versed in what that looks like. We've done that with EGVM, and you all are very aware of what that process looks like. Basically, we would do a proclamation of an emergency program, so a PAP with CDFA through our board of supervisors. That would be the proclamation that we're, within an emergency. And so then we would begin efforts at eradication and containment of any infestation of bliss if that were to happen. So that involves a lot of communication with industry, with CDFA, with other partners, USDA, with other county ag commissioners. That's additional delimitation trapping, looking for populations of pests, visual surveys of properties, and then ultimately, if we were to undertake an eradication effort, then that also, of course, includes foliar treatments, soil treatments, generally pesticide treatments for eradication purposes, and then biocontrol pests or biocontrol releases in those areas. So I'll end there. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have. Concerns, comments, anything specific that you'd like me to be inspired how to.
Thank you so much, Tracy. We do have one question in the chat. The question is huge cost and potential damage. Any recourse from the nursery?
That's a great question. There is a huge cost. I mean, I think that's what we've kind of been focused on is just what that's going to look like. I'm sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing. Okay. So I will say that we're investigating that nursery. So CDFA is working, it's a continual thing. They're investigating the incident, what happened. They're also looking at, ways to tighten up those nursery programs because clearly there are things that we could be doing differently that we're not. So, and so I think looking at how to tighten that up. As far as bird gel is concerned, there will likely be enforcement actions that take place. There are a number of county ag commissioners, including Napa, that have been talking with our district attorneys to see what that process is going to look like. There were some big missteps on their part. There wasn't proper notification to any counties. They shipped multiple shipments for weeks at a time. And so once we have more details, I think we're going to probably have a collective effort trying to penalize that nursery. But I don't know that that's going to be enough to recover the cost of what this is for us, for every county ag commissioner. The cost to do these trace forwards has been huge. I hired additional staff. That's not even speaking to the eradication efforts that we're probably looking at. And so that's going to be a whole other thing. So I don't know that we can go after the nursery for the cost of these eradication efforts, because ultimately, if that happens, we're talking about millions of dollars. So what we are doing is working with our local legislators, working with our industry groups, with lobbyists to try to lobby for additional funding from the legislator to help us pay for these programs. They've been underfunded for years and years. And so we're looking to get them to where they need to be, as well as addressing where we're headed and how we're going to fund that. I hope that answers that question.
Absolutely. Thank you. We have a little more time. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat. Also, Tracy, please share any other announcements that you have with us. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about a handful of things. Our 2025 crop report presentation and release date at the Board of Supervisors is July 28th. You will note that this is a much later publication for us. Typically, we're bringing that to the board in May. If you're not aware, Assembly Bill 1322 permanently changed the reporting deadlines for all of California wineries. That new timeline is shifted deadlines to provide more time for processors to finalize grape prices. And so traditionally, we would have, a preliminary report released before March 15th. Actually, I think our finalized numbers would come out of March 15th. So all of those dates have shifted by many, many weeks. And so the final press report is published April 30th, which doesn't give us a ton of time to pull that data together. And so I think now moving forward, we're going to see a delay in our publication, but we're working on it. We also have to contend with the Board of Supervisors meeting schedule and timelines and availability. And June is budget hearing, so that always has an impact when we were able to get it out there. I wanted to talk a little bit about New World screwworm. I think we maybe have some livestock folks on the line. So hopefully you're aware of it. You've been paying attention. New World screwworm, it is a pretty devastating parasitic fly. It's unlike normal blowflies in that female screwworm lay eggs in open wounds of living, warm-blooded animals, and so they're not actually feeding on dead tissue; they're feeding on live tissue, and so it's supposed to be incredibly painful, and then it can cause a fatality in the animal that's being fed upon if those wounds are left untreated. Infection sets in and some other things. So there've been a number of cases in Texas and New Mexico. You can find it in Mexico, and so we haven't seen any cases in California yet. There's no confirmation of cases, but it is something that the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the California Department of Food and Ag, and then county ag commissioners are watching. There are traps in areas like Imperial County and San Diego County that are monitoring for any New World screwworm to make sure. So any place that has a border with Mexico have traps in. So we continue to be free from. There's a lot of funding that's being thrown at this by USDA and by the legislature, so that's helping. There's a lot of sterile fly dispersal that's happening. There's the development of a new sterile insect rearing facility in Texas that's going to be very helpful. So they're doing a lot of sterile insect or sterile fly releases to help with that issue. And then USDA is increasing their manpower in their response. So there's a lot of things happening on that. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about our enforcement response regulations that are pending. So DPR announced proposed updates to enforcement response regs on June 12th. That proposal from DPR, California Department of Pesticide Regulation, is intended to increase fines, to reclassify violation types, and to revise the criteria for referring violations to enforcement. And so it's important for you all to be aware that you can be a part of that process. There are multiple public hearings. They had one on July 8th, again on July 21st, so tomorrow, and then July 28th. And you have an opportunity to listen to presentations from DPR and then to provide your feedback on these regs, the proposed regs, and sort of what you think works or doesn't work. You can also provide written comments that then DPR has to look at and address. So I think it's important to be engaged. What they're looking to do, they're going to update definitions and progressively increase the time frame for repeated violations. Where it lives now, we look at compliance history for an organization for 2 years. We look at a 2-year compliance history. This will grow that to 5 years, and they will gradually tier that in each year for 3 years until we hit that 5-year. And so that expands the window that we're looking at when we're doing inspections with growers and industry. And so if you have non-compliances, now we're looking not only at that 2-year, but it will be 5 years. And then the other part of that, they are looking to define new violation classes. So currently, Class A are considered serious violations, Class B are moderate violations, and then Class C tend to be minor violations, usually paperwork. And so they're going to create a Class A1, which would be specific to human impacts, and then Class A2, which will deal with property or environmental impacts. And that will also set new minimum fines at $3,000 for A1, minimum fines, $3,000 for A1, and then $1,200 for A2. And then it would also set new minimum fines for Class B from the current minimum, which is $250 to $300. And then also establish the minimum 20% penalty increase for repeated violations. So that's important. It's going to change our enforcement response when we're taking enforcement action with growers who have issues with worker safety or any violations that we find during inspections. Yeah, so that, definitely could have an impact on you all if you have issues within your businesses. I will say in general, Napa County, we're pretty good. We have you all are great in the industry, and you're very concerned with worker safety. You have pretty strong programs. You're doing all of the things you're supposed to do, but there are always missteps. So this is a good one to kind of pay attention to and be engaged in. And let's see. And then finally, just a handful of things. AgPass, if you're not aware, we changed our AgPass program this season. So we went from highly recommending that folks take a training program ahead of receiving or applying for the AgPass program to mandating. So that's an important step that we're pursuing. I think it's really important for anyone that wants to be a part of the AgPass program. And really, we're talking about your employees who would utilize that AgPass during disaster. It's important that they understand the dangers and the risks, and that they undergo these training programs each year to get that information. And so we're going to continue to work on that. We're working with farm worker foundations to do presentations at their cultivar meeting in November. And so we'll have dedicated time for the AgPass training piece in partnership with sheriff and fire and Ag Commissioner's office. So any workers that you send to that, they'll get that training, which I think is great. And then from my weights and measures team, we want to encourage everyone to call our team to start setting up your scale inspections. This is the time of year where we'll start going out. We're certifying scales. We have 750 scales throughout the county that we have to test. And they're all over the county. And so it's better if you contact us sooner than later. When you're ready for it, we may not be, and we may not have enough people to be out when you need it. So it's better to start sooner. And when we come to the sites to do scale inspections, we're looking for everything to be ready. It should be powered up. It should be on level surface and ready for inspection. And then let's see. Just For your awareness, I'm starting to get some bird cannon complaints. I know that's something that we see annually. And it's an issue. So we're doing everything we can on our end to have those conversations with the community and the folks that are complaining. And then, of course, we reach out to you all to remind you about the best practices and things you can be doing to minimize the impact to your neighbors, which I appreciate. I appreciate all of the collaboration and efforts on your part. And we'll continue to work with the residents and the community to help them understand the right to farm, what that looks like, what it means, and what the impact might be to them. And I think that is it for my updates. I'm happy to take any additional questions. I know I talked a lot. Christina, I don't know if there's anything else in the chat, but I'm open to answering anything.
Thank you so much. That was just a great presentation, and we really, really appreciate you sharing all this information with us this morning. Thank you for everyone here that is signed in and joining us this morning. We will share this presentation again on our e-newsletter that goes out weekly on Wednesdays for your staff so that you guys can continuously share this information and we can make sure we are all communicating and having a wonderful harvest. Also, we would just like to extend a huge thank you to Tracy. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to have you here this morning. Your office is so dedicated to agriculture in Napa County, and we support you, and we want to make sure that we're always communicating your message as well. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I appreciate it. I'm happy to. I'm really excited. I was excited to do this. And of course, we encourage anyone that has questions about anything to call our office. Don't hesitate. I have a wonderful team of people that are ready to serve and to listen to you all and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
We also included the information for the Agricultural Commissioner's office in our chat. So there is the phone number and also the email address if you're interested in contacting them further. Also, the Napa County Farm Bureau is always here to serve our members, so please call us if we can get you connected with the Agricultural Commissioner's office. And thank you so much for attending today. One quick announcement for the Farm Bureau is that we have our membership mixer at the Napa Fair August 6th, so we hope to see you all there. And Tracy, we hope to see you there too. So have a wonderful week, everyone, and thank you for being here this morning, and thank you for supporting the Napa Farm Bureau. Have a nice week.